So the company was started in 1983 when the president, whose full name is Yuke Taniguchi, decided it would be more profitable to make games with a group of people instead of by himself. Well, the first game Yuke's made as a company was actually programmed by Yuke himself. It's called Hermie Hopperhead, which was made for Sony. At the same time we were making that game, Kenji Nakamura's older brother, who was a big fan of pro wrestling, was working on a pro wrestling game and decided that pro wrestling games should really be made in 3D with polygon characters instead of just simple 2D characters. And that basically was the start of Tokon Retsuden. And the two games basically got done right about at the same time, and those were the first two releases. The original, that kind of trio of fundamental elements of the game, striking, grappling, submission, those originally came about with Tokon Retsuden, early pro wrestling game we made. And the original concept was basically a rock, paper, scissors approach to gameplay. There were three basic things you could do. Each of them was superior to one of the others and inferior to one of the others. So basically what they wanted to do was take pro wrestling elements, put it into a very well-known simple game mechanic like the rock, paper, scissors setup, so it'd be easier for people to get into and understand that basic part of the gameplay. The reversal system came around as kind of a natural evolution. When we had the basic rock, paper, scissors mechanic working, there's an obvious gap between that simple game mechanic and what happens in pro wrestling. Then in pro wrestling, a big part of the ebb and flow of a match is the fact that there are turnarounds, and the momentum changes, things turn around and come back the opposite way. So once we had the basic rock, paper, scissors thing working, and you could see that we needed some kind of turnaround mechanism. And at least in the Japanese version of rock, paper, scissors, we have something called Aiko, which is people pick the same thing, the game kind of continues off in a different direction. So similar to how that works in the rock, paper, scissors game, we felt we needed to add in the whole concept of, well, reversal, not just in the move sense of reversal, but reversal of fortune kind of reversal. And we needed some mechanism for that to better reflect the way a real pro wrestling match goes. Just as the popularity of pro wrestling in Japan was kind of fading out, we were approached with the opportunity to develop WWF, as it was at the time, WWF game. And at that time, most of the staff was very familiar with Japanese pro wrestling and looked at the WWF as a really different kind of entertainment, whereas more focused on the entertainment aspect than the wrestling aspect. And we're very worried about how to approach it and if they could do a good job of it and so on. Kitazawa-san, one of the lead designers, was a WWF fan at the time, very big fan, and so he became kind of an evangelist within the team, showing people how entertaining the WWF was. He had a big collection of videos that he would show to people and explain to people the different kind of entertainment that the WWF was. And as people began to look and understand what the WWF was all about, they realized that actually, compared to Japanese pro wrestling, this was a lot easier of a world to make a game about. It was just much more, lent itself much better to making a video game. The excitement, the over-the-top action, and so on. And so people began to get quite excited about the potential for making a WWF game at the time. And then Yuke Taniguchi, the president of Yuke's, also pointed out to people that this is a big chance that you don't often get in making games, to come out and make a real million-selling game. The popularity of pro wrestling in the U.S. was very high, much higher than what they had in Japan at the time. And again, it was a kind of a big game that you could get behind and make a real exciting game out of. And then people realized the potential to make a really interesting game out of the WWE, and in addition, the fact that they go out and actually make a real top-selling, million-seller kind of game got everyone excited, and that was when they decided to take on the challenge of making WWE games, and that's how the SmackDown series started.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest changes that's related to the game in the way wrestling has gone to become more about general entertainment is that in the weekly shows you see that more time is being devoted to story and less time is being devoted to matches. The matches get shorter. But in the big events, the PPVs, they still tend to have the longer, more dramatic matches that are typical of older wrestling. So we try to keep the main wrestling feel and timing to be in line with those bigger PPV events, the real big matches you have on the PPVs. But at the same time, realize a lot of the audience is getting used to this more story, shorter matches. So we also try to make the gameplay so that you can enjoy shorter matches as well. Not all matches have to be a big, long, dramatic, drawn-out game.
It's often hard to continue to make a series like this because people get tired of making a very similar game every year. We have been fortunate enough to have an industry-leading position where we make very good games, and the staff feel kind of a responsibility as industry leaders to make the games, not just because they want to or because it's a fun thing to make, but they feel kind of a responsibility as kind of high-level craftsmen to make the game and to do a good job. That gives the staff a lot of motivation to keep working on the game. I think one of the keys to our success has been our focus on making very high-quality wrestling games and sticking with that.